What's up, guys? This is Bobo Jones. I was planning on doing the Santa Monica Mountains this morning like Mulholland, but I just slept like shit, and I just slept in because my sleep quality was so bad all night, and I don't want to ride if I don't sleep well. So I figured the least I can do is tootle around the beach, maybe make a quick video. On my list of things to chat about, although I mention my previous bike all the time, which was the S1000XR, a fucking amazing bike, shares the same engine as the double R and the single R, although it's tuned much more similarly to the, what is this guy doing? Hello? What are you doing? Although it's tuned much more similarly to the single R. But yeah, I fucking love that bike. I owned that bike for almost 7 years before I got this bike. Similar-ish power to this bike, but this bike just feels like an absolute monster because of the torque. The torque is significantly higher on this bike than that one. So, wanted to talk about a few things, like generally riding and fit. I guess on both bikes, I'll cover both bikes. I own the XR, but I rode the single R a few times and remember it and liked it. Overall, don't really see... Actually, maybe that's not true. I guess the advantage of the single R over the XR is just like canyon riding and the size of it and how it handles. The single R handles closer to this Tuono, but still this Tuono just handles far better in the canyons, in my opinion. But all three excellent bikes, like really, really excellent, amazing bikes. For me, ultimately, I upgraded because I wanted something new. I don't work very far away from my job, so riding into work isn't a big deal. I only either motorcycle or bicycle into work, like this guy next to me. Actually, I bicycle literally right down there on the beach, so it's a pretty nice commute. So my main purpose for my motorcycles nowadays is canyon riding on the weekend, and I wanted something a little bit more exciting for that, but that could also, if I want to do like a big ride once a year, handle that, and that's where the Tuono came out perfectly. That being said, the single R and double R, I would say, are better for most things. So let's go over them one by one. So again, my commute is 15 minutes, but it is far worse commuting, I'd say, on this bike than either the single R or the double R, just because the engine is so smooth and so easy on that bike. And it's just, you need to think about the bike a little bit less, I think, when you're commuting, which is what you want. And I think that ease of commuting and comfort on, you know, those bikes is also what makes them a bit more boring when it comes to like canyon riding or exciting riding. I do think those engines, because they are so German and so precise and so linear and so like, you know exactly what you're getting, that it just makes them what makes them great for commuting and even longer trips like touring is what makes them a bit more boring for, exciting riding and just like feeling a bit emotional when you're riding a motorcycle. And again, I totally get the argument that the predictability of those motors, makes them safer and just better for motorcycling overall. But again, I had that for almost 7 years, and I personally was ready for something new, especially given that the vast majority of my riding was going to be just like weekend sick bike, was just going to be weekend canyon riding, which this is just so much better for. So I'd say, like, what's your use case? If you're going to be primarily commuting to work and your commute is reasonably long, And those also come with heated grips. So, and if you live in a cold climate, I do not. I live in Southern California, so don't have to worry about that. I'd say, yeah, go for the single R and double R. If you're going to be touring mostly, go for the single R and double R. If you're going to be only riding in the canyons, and this is going to be like your canyon and track bike only, then yeah, definitely go for the Tuono. It's much more fun, much more exciting. The power comes on in a much more exhilarating way. The sound is way better on this bike. The engine note, I mean, inline fours are cool, but just the engine note of this is just like amazing. So that would be those scenarios. As far as fit goes, the one thing that really shocked me about this bike when I was shopping for it, you know, I was pretty sure I had test driven an older model. This is a 22, which is the same as the 21 and the 23. They're all carryovers except for some colors and stuff. And they've upgraded some parts in the 23, so the 23 should be more reliable. But yeah, basically I'd say I thought I was going to be like way too big on this. So I'm 6'2" and like 225 right now. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a really cramped bike for me. You know, the XR is so just laid out. Like there's like no bend in your legs. It's like a true like touring bike feel. And I was really surprised because I started riding this, and at first I had to get used to it because I definitely am more bent over, and my knees are definitely more bent, so there's a little more weight on my hands than on the XR, of course. But man, this bike fits me perfectly, like where my knees are in the tank, you know, when I'm squeezing on the tank for braking or if I'm doing some canyon riding, it's like perfect for me. So if you're a bigger rider, this bike is surprisingly good for bigger riders. Again, nowhere near as comfortable as the XR, which you're just like totally laid out on that bike, but really shockingly good on this bike, I would say. So, and probably, I think this bike was more comfortable than the single R as well. For me as a taller rider, I remember feeling more cramped on that bike. So highly recommend if you're a bigger rider. You know, it would probably, this is the base version of the bike, so it would probably do me some good to upgrade the you know, the suspension just because I'm so heavy. But fit-wise, in terms of my height, this bike is amazing, which I was really shocked at. So that should not be a detractor for you. I mean, when I first got on this bike at the dealership and my wife took a picture of me, I still kind of look like, you know, Donkey Kong in Mario Kart on this. Like, I still look really big on the bike, but comfort-wise, it's just amazing. And that's very surprising given the handling boost that you get on this versus something like an XR. Is just so great, and how it handles and how in control you feel. Like in the canyons, it just feels like you're on rails compared to the XR, which handles really well also. But that bike's very top heavy, so it has sort of this droppy thing, like where it like sort of drops into corners, whereas this one just feels planted the whole time. And to that point, you know, I like running Rossos on this bike because it feels great for the nature of this bike. But on my XR, I hated Rosso 3s because they gave the XR more of that tippy feeling. So I always wanted a more neutral tire. Like even something like an S22 felt better. And then I ended up with the Road Smarts on that bike, which felt way better. It's a very neutral tire. But because this bike, just the geometry of it is so good, even getting a more aggressive profile tire like a Rosso 3 feels like excellent on this bike, and I still feel so much more planted even with a more aggressive tire than I did on the XR with like a more neutral tire like the Road Smart or the S22s. So another note there about these two. So I mean, look, I won't go on and on. You know, this bike is just, look at this, it's just so good. And the electronics on these bikes are both equal, I'd say. The The brakes on this were slightly better than my XR, although the single R does come with Brembo M50s, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But all the other stuff is pretty much equal. The only thing this doesn't come with, again, is seat warmers, and my XR did have electronic suspension, which you could get on the factory version of this. But if you're looking for exhilaration and canyon riding with a little bit of touring on the side and a little bit of short commuting now and then, definitely go for the Tuono over the XR or the single R. But if you're going to be riding a lot and you put miles on the bike, you know, comfort-wise, both, you know, ergonomically in terms of the XR and just how easy that bike is to neutral, there we go. Just how easy that bike is to handle and how smooth and linear the acceleration is, I'd say go for one of the inline fours, the BMW inline fours, if you're just putting fucking packing miles on it. But either way, let's be honest, they're all extremely good bikes, so you're going to be happy no matter what. And yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all I have to say on the matter. You can't go wrong ultimately, but depending on what your riding use cases are, I mean, I'm so happy. Even with the reliability stuff I've had on this bike and, you know, the few warranty repairs I've had to get on it, which weren't big ones, they were minor ones. And even though Aprilia was a little sketchy on 2 of my warranty repairs, like trying to get out of it essentially, ultimately I pushed them and they did them. I'm still so happy to own this bike, and it's been such a fun change for me coming from an XR to this. And it really suits more, I think, my current like riding style and the kind of riding that I'm doing, which is more canyon stuff, very quick commuting. Like my commute on my bike, on this bike, is like, you know, 14-15 minutes depending on lights, so it's not a big deal. And now again, my job is right near the beach path, so I'm bicycling most of the time on my e-bike or my race push bike. So that's it. Listen to this. Oh my god, dude, that fucking sound is just ridiculous. And this is with a stock exhaust, by the way, and it just sounds so good. I don't know why you'd ever need an aftermarket exhaust on this bike. I mean, this is already, you know, I always wear earplugs when I'm going on a longer ride. It's already as loud as I'd ever want it to be. But yeah, anyway, that's it for me. I don't know where I'm going. I guess I'll just go home now and do something else, play some ping pong or something. But anyway, that's it for me, guys. Hope this helps. If you have any questions or things I did not cover, hit me up. I do not want to go on the highway. Hit me up in the comments section. Again, this is Bobo Jones saying, Arrivederci, ride safe, be safe, and yeah, get yourself a Tuono because it's super fun. Bye-bye.